There are prisons with walls, and there are prisons without them. The first you can see, bars, guards, a locked gate. The second lives inside you, built from thoughts, fears, and wounds you refuse to face. It is the silent architecture of the mind, a cage disguised as comfort. You live in it when you smile while breaking inside, when you choose peace over truth, when you bury the pain so deep that even your own soul forgets where it sleeps. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." These words are not philosophy, they are diagnosis, because every unhealed wound becomes a pattern. Every shadow we deny becomes a destiny we repeat. We call it personality, we call it luck, but beneath it all, the mind is writing its own prison walls. Listen closely, the bars are not metal. They are made of thoughts like, "I am not enough." They wouldn't understand. If I show my real self, I'll be abandoned. And so, we build our own solitary cell, lined with self-doubt, guarded by fear, illuminated only by the faint light of what we might have been. The modern world rewards this kind of confinement. It praises the masks we wear. It teaches you to smile through your exhaustion, to post your happiness while bleeding in silence, to fear being seen more than being lost. But beneath every smile, beneath every performance, there is a quiet voice whispering, "This isn't me." You hear it in the stillness between distractions, in the empty glow of the screen at 2 a.m., in the ache that follows every brief success. It's not depression, it's the soul knocking from the inside, asking to be let out, and yet to open that door means to face what you've buried. The parts of you called weak, the memories that made you ashamed, the desires you've judged and the fears you've ignored. Jung called this the shadow, the dark twin of the conscious self, the unseen life that governs what you do not understand about yourself. You are not free until you meet it. You are not whole until you walk into that darkness willingly, because freedom does not come from escaping the prison. It begins when you realize you built it, and if you built it, you can unbuild it. This is where the awakening begins. In the silence after truth, in the courage to look at what you've long avoided. In the first moment you whisper to yourself, "I'm ready to see." There is a strange kind of suffering that hides beneath control. It is not the pain of chaos, but the pain of pretending that everything is fine. You wake up, put on your calmest face, and step into a world that demands performance. You smile to avoid questions. You laugh to escape silence. And yet, somewhere between the smile and the sigh, something in you feels hollow. This hollowness is not emptiness. It's the echo of the self you abandoned. Carl Jung believed that repression is not forgetting. It is burying a truth so deeply that it begins to rot in the dark. Every unacknowledged emotion decays, and from that decay rises bitterness, envy, exhaustion. Not because you are weak, but because the truth you suppress eventually turns against you. Modern life rewards this repression. We are told to stay positive, to manifest light, to think happy thoughts. But light that denies shadow becomes blinding, and positivity that ignores pain becomes poison. You've seen it, people who smile through despair, who drown in silence while the world applauds their calm. Their peace is not peace, it is paralysis. Their joy is not joy, it is anesthesia. Because the shadow does not disappear when ignored. It waits, it watches, and when the mask begins to crack, it seeps through the fractures. It appears in your relationships when you lash out at those who remind you of your own flaws. It appears in your ambitions when you chase validation instead of meaning. It appears in your quiet moments when the silence becomes unbearable. You think you are escaping it by running towards success, beauty, or love. But what you are truly doing is dragging the shadow along. Invisible, patient, heavy. Jung wrote that what you resist not only persists, it grows stronger. And so you build a world made of avoidance. You fill every gap with noise, every fear with distraction, every night with glowing screens. You drown your soul in stimulation because silence has become dangerous. But silence is where the shadow speaks, and that is why you cannot stand it. When you finally stop, when the scrolling ends and the world quiets, you meet the thing you've been running from, your own reflection. You see the disappointment, the envy, the jealousy, the rage. You see every version of yourself that you denied to be loved, and for a moment, The illusion of who you are collapses. It's terrifying to realize that beneath the persona there is a stranger waiting, but that stranger is not your enemy. It is the forgotten self, the one that remembers what you wanted before the world told you who to be. Yet most people turn away at this point. They run back to the comfort of distraction, to the rituals of denial, to the numbness that passes for peace. Because to meet the shadow is to die a little. The death of your image, your control, your story. And no one wants to die, but here lies the paradox. Only through this small death can you be reborn as something whole. To see the shadow is to see the truth, and to see the truth is to lose the prison. The struggle then is not against darkness, it is against seeing, against honesty, against the courage it takes to stand before your reflection and whisper, I have been both the jailer and the jailed. When that admission finally breaks the silence, you will feel something move inside, a trembling, an awakening, as if the walls you built are beginning to breathe. And in that first breath of truth, the revelation begins to form. There is a moment in every life when the truth becomes unbearable, and yet it is the only thing that can set you free. You look around and realize that the chains were never external. No one locked the door but you, no one held the key but you, and still for years you have mistaken the sound of your own mind for the voice of faith. Carl Jung called this the great confrontation, the meeting between the ego and the unconscious, between the self you think you are and the one you have forgotten. Most of us believe we are our thoughts, our choices, our plans. We imagine that the conscious mind sits on a throne, ruling the inner kingdom. But that's an illusion. Beneath the surface lies an ocean, ancient, vast, and alive. And it is this unseen water that carries us, decides our desires, chooses our fears, and whispers to us in dreams. Jung wrote, the shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well. That narrow door is your confrontation with yourself, and beyond it lies not destruction, but integration. You see, the shadow is not evil. It is simply everything you refuse to love. Every jealousy you denied, every anger you judged, every lust you repressed, every weakness you disowned. They gather in the dark, waiting for you to claim them. The shadow is not the enemy of the light, it is the ground on which the light stands. Without it, light has no contrast, no meaning, no depth. To integrate the shadow is to stop fighting yourself. It is to understand that you are not divided between good and bad, but between seen and unseen. The moment you turn toward the darkness within, you begin to reclaim your power from the unconscious. You begin to live as a whole being, not perfect but real. It is the difference between acting kind and being kind, between chasing love and embodying it, between pretending to be calm and understanding peace. Because when you face your shadow, you stop projecting it onto the world. You stop blaming others for what you refuse to confront in yourself. You begin to see that every person you resent mirrors the part of you you've buried, that every enemy is a messenger, every conflict is a mirror, and every irritation is an invitation to see your own unconscious. The shadow reveals itself not through your dreams alone, but through your triggers. When something offends you deeply, it is often because it touches an unhealed wound within. To live consciously, then, is not to be without darkness. It is to walk with awareness of it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, if it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. But Jung might have added, if it is unbearable, then learn from it. Because the unbearable is a threshold. It is where your growth hides, disguised as pain. When you stand before your shadow and say, yes, this too is me, something extraordinary happens. The darkness begins to soften. The inner war loses its meaning, and the energy once trapped in repression returns as strength. This is the revelation, that your greatest peace lies in what you once feared most. When you stop running from the darkness, you stop running from life. And when you stop running from life, you finally begin to live it. Integration is not the victory of light over dark. It is the dance between them, a balance so fragile, so sacred, that only humility can hold it. To integrate the shadow is to look at your own reflection and see both the sinner and the saint, and love them equally. It is to stop seeking heaven by rejecting hell, because both are within you, both are you, and the moment you accept this, the walls of the prison dissolve. not with noise or drama, but with a quiet realization. You were never truly trapped. You were only asleep. And now you begin to awaken. Awakening is not the end. It is the beginning of a different kind of labor. The slow and sacred work of becoming whole. To know your shadow is to meet the raw material of your humanity, but to integrate it, that is the work of a lifetime. It requires awareness, humility, and a tenderness toward your own imperfection. Carl Jung said that enlightenment does not come by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That means every time you catch yourself reacting, projecting, or running, you are offered a mirror. And every mirror is a teacher. When someone insults you and it burns, pause. Before you strike back, before you defend your identity, ask, what part of me is being touched right now? That moment of inquiry is alchemy, because the distance between reaction and reflection is the birthplace of consciousness. Integration begins there, in those small, quiet moments where you choose awareness over instinct. The shadow is not tamed by force. It softens through recognition, when you sit with your envy and see the longing beneath it, when you face your anger and find the wound it protects, when you meet your fear and see the child still trembling in its center, you begin to dissolve the illusion of separation. This is not self-improvement, it is self-reconciliation. Jung once wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because it means letting go of who you think you should be. It means facing that you are both capable of cruelty and compassion, of deceit and honesty, of destruction and creation. And yet, this acceptance is liberation, because once you stop hiding, you stop pretending. Authenticity is not perfection, it's presence. It's the courage to be exactly what you are, without the mask, without the performance. When you begin to integrate the shadow, your relationships change. You no longer demand that others carry the parts of you you've denied. You stop needing them to validate what you secretly disown. You begin to see others not as enemies, but as mirrors reflecting the same struggle to be whole. Conflict softens into understanding. Pride transforms into humility. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, emerges not from superiority, but from shared humanity. Because you see now, everyone is fighting their own unconscious. Everyone is carrying their own prison. In leadership, this understanding becomes wisdom. The integrated person does not rule through fear or image, but through presence. They can hold both authority and empathy, both strength and vulnerability, because they have faced those opposites within themselves. And in solitude, integration becomes serenity. No longer haunted by hidden voices, you can sit in silence without needing to escape it. The mind no longer attacks itself. The soul no longer splits in two. You begin to live as if nothing within you is alien. This is transformation. Not a change of what you are, but a reconciliation with what has always been there. When you can hold the light and the dark in the same breath, you become a vessel for something greater. Not perfection, but wholeness. Not control, but harmony. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. That source is the integrated self, the self that no longer fears its own depths. To walk this path is to live without the constant war of repression. It is to move through life with a quiet confidence, not the loudness of certainty, but the stillness of understanding, because you have met your darkness and it did not destroy you. It became your teacher. You have faced your fear and it did not devour you. It revealed your courage, and you have seen the prison you built, not as punishment, but as protection. A child's attempt to survive a world it did not yet understand. Now, you can finally open the door, not by force, but by forgiveness. And as the light spills in, you do not need to flee the darkness anymore. You simply stand in both and call it home. In the end, there is no grand victory, only silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but of understanding. You have walked through the corridors of your own mind, touched the cold walls of your prison, and realized that every stone was laid by your own hands. And yet, in that revelation, there is no guilt, only clarity. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You have done that. You have turned inward and faced the chaos, not to destroy it, but to listen to it. The shadow you once feared is no longer your enemy. It has become your guide. The same darkness that once swallowed your peace now holds your wisdom. You begin to see the subtle beauty of being human, to carry contradictions without shame, to feel deeply without drowning, to love what once terrified you. Because wholeness is not purity, it is the union of opposites, grace and guilt, light and shadow, serenity and sorrow. To be whole is to stand in the center of your being and say, yes, all of this is me. You no longer chase freedom, you breathe it. It is not something the world can give you, for it was never taken, only forgotten. The prison dissolves not with thunder, but with awareness, one quiet realization at a time, one small act of honesty after another. And soon the walls no longer exist, because the mind that built them has understood itself. You notice that life no longer demands certainty, it invites wonder. You no longer crave validation. You seek truth, and you no longer fear being unseen, because you have finally seen yourself. This is the echo that remains after awakening. A calm acceptance, a quiet courage, a compassion that no longer depends on being right. When you see another person lost in their own illusions, you no longer judge. You remember what it was like to live in shadow. And so, you meet them not with superiority but with understanding, because you know the darkness they fear is the same one you befriended. You walk through the world differently now, not lighter but deeper, not louder but clearer. You realize that peace is not the absence of struggle, but the presence of understanding within it. The light does not erase the dark, it illuminates it, and when you learn to hold both, you discover what Jung called the self, the unshakable center beyond every mask, every fear, every illusion. So, you return to life, to your work, your relationships, your solitude, not as someone who has escaped, but as someone who has integrated. You no longer ask, who am I supposed to be? You simply live, and in that living you become whole. Because the truth is simple, your mind was never your prison. It was your teacher. Every wall it built was an invitation to see what you were ready to learn. Every shadow was a doorway, every fear a mirror. And when you finally looked, really looked, you found not darkness, but depth. Not emptiness, but infinity. The journey ends here, where it began, within. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it. The faint sound of freedom breathing quietly inside you. The echo of your own awakening.